G'day friends, welcome to today's YouTube video. My name is James. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new. I got something really exciting for you today. This is my journal. It's a new one. Doesn't look too new, does it? I've already busted the spine open. This is a Diario Grafico in art journal. I really don't know who make these. I think they're in Portugal or in Spain somewhere. I got them from Riot Arts and Crafts in Australia a billion years ago, and they were clearancing them. So I got these for $2, and I wish I bought every single one they were selling because I do have a few. They're one of my first very big art journals that I used. They're kind of like cardstock. Can you hear that? It says drawing paper, but it's very smooth cardstock. It's so delicious to work on. Love it. Like I said, don't know where you can find them, but try Riot Arts and Crafts if they're still around in Australia. I'm not quite sure. I don't think they'd sell them anymore because they were clearancing them. But this is what I've done my Halloworkshop in. Here it is. Let's just start it. We're going to flip it. We're going to flip my Halloworkshop to see what we got up to. All the fun that we had. This is a lovely little title page that I made. And first up, this wasn't actually a part of it. Everything else is. I've kind of... I have such a thing about getting the crumbs out of the journal. I always use a paintbrush. They're usually in the gutter, all the eraser crumbs. Every right-hand side page becomes like one of the lessons. So there's a warm-up, there's a main lesson, then there's the extra mile that we do on YouTube, and then somewhere around there, there's like a little monster mashup that I did on Instagram Reels. So that's kind of the format, but you'll see all this other stuff in there as well because I've been using this as my journal, my like regular art journal as well, since I started the Halloworkshop. So all the other things that I do as I go about my life and take my photos and go and do my events and things are also journaled in here. So that's kind of what you're going to see today. All of the Halloworkshop content, the lessons that are in here, but then also all the other art journaling stuff that I've been doing, the documenting, the photos, the ephemera from essentially September, whatever, that we started this. I didn't even write the start date. We started it like early September. September 11th, I think we might have started. And we did 7 weeks of Wednesdays up until Halloween. This wasn't a part of it. I did this in a page in 10, a version of this. We did a heart in a cobweb. If you look really closely, kind of zoom out, blur your eyes a little bit, you might be able to see it in the screen better than you can see it in real life. In real life, this just looks like a spider web. We can actually see the profile of my face. It's my silhouette kind of caught in that spider web. This took me forever. Very proud of it. It's kind of like an optical illusion, but that was really fun. And in that page in 10 episode that I did, I said, oh, I might want to do this with my profile. I'll see if I get around to it. And I did. There it is. This is the supplies skull stack, our first warm-up lesson. This was a lesson in progress, really. So we started this, the very first thing that we did for the Halloworkshop, and then every time I would add like new supplies, I essentially start with an empty pot. This is an old succulent pot that Steve gave me. I would put the supplies that were regularly used in here, and then I would start documenting them on here. So the different types of pens and pencils and markers and all the gorgeous things that I used. I don't put every color on there, but I do try to get at least one of every type of art supply and different brand. Like I've got a lot of liner pens, but the King Art is different to the Copic, is different to the Sakura Pigmon, is different... Pigma? Sakura Micron Pigma is different to the Muji gel pen. So, you know, I just try to get them all in there and make a little documentation of what I actually use throughout the course. I love these because you kind of build them as they go, and then I watercolored the black background at the end. I also had some lovely washi tape on here. That's why it's got this really beautiful crisp border. I did everything very neat. I was in a very neat season. I'm surprised. Usually with the workshops, I kind of get crazy and hectic, but I was in a very neat season. You can see very neat borders, neatly laid out information. A lot of the left-hand side pages will feature the worksheets or the references I do for the course. And then lots of tags. I found my box of tags, so I've just been working on tags. Look at Bianca and her cone. She had a surgery, poor thing. It was very fabulous though, the big blue cone. She looked like she was from Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. This was from Virtual Voyage 9, when I was looking at, there was a C-Day lesson I think I did where I just did an entire activity book by Sir Quentin Blake, and one of the activities in it had this, and I think I made her the witch, or I don't know what I did. I think I made her the witch and I put up this umbrella and then we had this rain cloud, whatever. That inspired this lesson. So I wanted to put the little sticker in there to make sure I remembered. Love her. From Matilda. Also harvested a lot of ephemera from junk mail that I got. So a lot of the random little bits and pieces in here are just from old magazines and old junk mail. I didn't want to buy any new ephemera. I've been in a really big anti-buying space right now, just saving money, just being frugal, but have been really keen on harvesting a lot of ephemera from journals. I also have tons of Collage Club stuff, but just random stuff from, not journals, from junk mail. This is Fortune. You light up the room with your smile. Thanks, Panda Express. I think Steve got that one. And more ephemera. I went to Oogie Boogie Bash. Oogie Boogies. That was actually the cast preview. I went to it as well, just on my own. These are more tags. Just looking, I guess I'll flip this around for you so you can see just the extra stuff that I do for the lesson. Look at Oliver being a sook. Sometimes I stretch on the floor and he'll get up on one of the tables and just look at me from up top, or he'll just lay all over me on the floor. He loves when I'm on the floor. He thinks it's playtime. It's like a puppy dog. A lot of the lessons I also did on a tag. I think in fact every single lesson I did a tag version. So there's the tag version of the supply skull stack. Here's the tag version of what was essentially the extra mile lesson. The other tags are here for arachnid atoms. That was our main lesson, just focusing on pencil scribbles and just some more tags. Here's some life stuff, just photos. I've been screenshotting lots of what I put in my Insta stories. Sometimes I'll spend some time on those Insta stories. Not a lot, but you know, I'll just make like a cute little collage of my day, and instead of redoing the collage in my journal, I'll just screenshot what I've done in the story and print it out and put it on here with my friend Emmy. Here was some harvested ephemera. That was from Mad Magazine. I used to get Mad magazines when we would go to Southwest Rocks for Christmas holidays. I thought they were so funny. So when I was like a teenager, and I picked one up, I wouldn't even say recently, maybe a year or two ago, and I've just had it. It sits around, and ironically it became the best ephemera to pick up the other day because I was looking for travel themed things, and it was a travel issue. So I harvested a whole bunch of stuff from there, and then it also had some things that I felt like went well for Halloween. Here are the workshop references for week 2. This is Kokeshi Ween, inspired by the Alexander Gerard folk art dolls, which I would really love to make some for Christmas, but I've been looking and I've been trying to be looking for finials, but I think they're too decorated. I really just need to find a woodworker who can do what I want them to do, and I'll just have that. Because I don't need the shape to be super crazy, but I do need it to be very blocky, and I want it to be wood. So I don't know what I'm going to do there. I'm certainly not going to make it. I'll try and find a friend who... I know Steve's got some friends that do woodworking, so I'll ask them if they can do it. I don't even know if it's wood turning or if they could just saw it out. But anyway, this is a lot of that. There was the tag version. Oogie Boogie Bash at Disneyland. These are so old school, these ones. Remember when I used to do those digi-stamps on Etsy? These are my photo strips. That is so funny. I went to the cast preview for Tiana's Bayou Adventure at Disneyland. Literally just now. I'm still saturated wet from it. And I was with my friend Josh, and we were like, what should we do? And we both love Cat's Eyes, so we did the touch choreography, but I forgot that I did it for Incredicoaster too. I think I'm going to have photos of me doing this touch choreography on all the rides at Disneyland. Those are my photo collages, having a good time there. Oh, there's Josh. We were the ones doing this today. Oogie Boogie, and I guess at Tiana. Here was my finished piece. This was the main lesson. This was Fantastical Lashes. You know, I love my lashes. Lots of eyeballs everywhere. The tag version. Some of the tags I did for the lesson became better than the actual finished pieces that I did. And then some of them I really didn't like. Like this one, I really don't like. I don't know what it is. It is so not wrong, but there's something about the proportions that is so off to me. I don't know. I can't stand that one. Love her though. I know it looks like the same thing to most people, but there's something slightly off about it that I can't get beyond. This was a kind of fun look at the development of how these eyes came to be. And if you notice, I did do something very particular here with the graphite. I used graphite, but then on the eyes only, I used black pencil. So can you see how there's a real difference in the intensity? Sometimes when you're using a graphite pencil and you start pressing hard, you're like, oh wow, it's getting really, really dark. Like, what am I going to do? The darkness is relative to the rest of everything that's on the page. Grab a black pencil, put it over the top, then you'll see just how dark it wasn't. So it's really interesting, but it's a great way to feature or kind of, you know, hone in on something or bring attention to something. If you're feeling like everything is looking really heavy and you've used a graphite pencil or a lead pencil, whatever you got, even like a really heavy black wing, Just use a black on top of it and you can really pull focus or clean up and sharpen. Here is a postcard that I was sent, some photos of things, and then just random junk, really. Harvested more ephemera from my old Disney fan magazines. Steve got me this card, and last week I actually went to the French diner that he got it from, and they had a new card as well, so I've got the new one as well at the back of the journal. I've been using these stupid little eye strips to make my eyes look younger. Don't know if it's worked yet. I'm exhausted, so it probably doesn't look like I got any younger at all. I think maybe sleep and water would probably fix the problem that I'm trying to get those little eye bag things to do. This is the Moon Men from the Extra Mile for week 2. Lovely. I do think the tag looked better of that, this one, than the actual piece. Sometimes it's the size. It's the size that something's drawn at. Because the pen, even though I used bigger pens, because this is so big, the detail looks really, really fine. And on this, the detail doesn't look as fine. So the balance in the line work feels more correct here than this. There's too much of a disparity between the thickness of the lines and how thin some of the lines are. It just made all the thin lines look too thin, I think. I know that's so picky, but I do think about these things when I'm evaluating the success of certain things. And it really, I could translate, I could have used bigger pens and it would have been fine. But, once I started, I'd started. There's just those types of bits of information that when you're really satisfied with a lot of the skills you've got in your tool belt, you can be a lot more discerning that way. You can start getting pickier and pickier, just to really hone in on what you think makes certain things successful and be able to repeat that. You're ultimately you want to keep going with everything that makes you feel successful, right? So it's good to know those things if you need to know them. Here are my little light Larsens, all my little spooky guys. Love them. Super simple lesson. Really kind of hinges on how successful you are at letting go, I feel. I feel like there were ones that I got a little bit more restrained with that didn't have a good effect. And then there were ones that just really worked out. But you have to be gung-ho with the water as well. So this one really tests people's ability to just kind of let go, which I like. Random junk. All in black and white. This is black and white junk. Photos of Steve and I in Italy. Can you believe we've been to Italy? Well, since I started this journal. The main lesson for week 3, so that was a warm-up, this is the main, was the lolly bag. And this is kind of a decoding type lesson. So we had this whole alphabet broken up into different types of candies. And so candies kind of spell a word out. This one spelled Frank for Frankenstein. I don't know which one did this spell. T. Can't even find the other one now. A. Oh, I think it's tag. That's funny. Tag. I think this one spelled James. Yes, James. This one might spell Steve. Oh no. S. No, that's not even an S. C. A. N. Candy. There's a bit of deductive reasoning going on there. I'm not really that quick. But yeah, we did these really fun lolly bags and then these decoded messages in there. It was supposed to be your name, but people did all kinds of different things. I did some on this colored paper because I thought it would be really nice as well. I've used my Neocolor 2s. The transfer is shocking. Sometimes I will come through when I'm flipping and I will just take an eraser and just erase some of the transfer. Over time, whatever needs to keep transferring will keep transferring, but it is much easier just to kind of remove it as you go sometimes. And then other times you just have to accept that it's always going to be bad, especially with something like this. I did even use my kneaded eraser to kind of steamroll over it a bunch just to pick up any of that loose crayon, but just is awful for transfer. I could have put tracing paper there, didn't. Don't know why. I usually do. Here is some old photos of trick-or-treating my sister and I used to do. We didn't actually go trick-or-treating. It's not huge in Australia, but we felt bad for the kids that would go around. And so we would make sure that our house had lollies. So my mum would be at work, and then when she would come home, she'd get dressed up too. And we'd hide under the cars and like reach out to grab people's feet. Like it was a whole production. I ran down the streets and chased after teenagers. It was hilarious. But these are our old looks. This one really creeped me out. My sister had like a pregnant alien belly. That was some of the grossest makeup I'd ever done on myself. I did like greasy hair with yellow roots. It was gross. My mum had that mask on. That was so scary. Even my mum would get under the car too. It was hilarious. Very, very good Halloween memories. Here are some more tags. So this was the Extra Mile, which was Skeletina Ballerina. I think she's gorgeous. I think both of them are great. This one was the mashup lesson. This was around, so this was another one of the mashup lessons too. I was trying to build in as much of the week I could into one of these monster mashups on my Instagram reels. Some were more successful than others, but ultimately it was just a way to play with the information. I wanted to make sure that, you know, once I'd done all of the work, that I could encourage people to go back into the lessons and pull parts out and then rework the lessons to feel like you're getting some of the information into practice and into use and not just step by stepping through a process. Even though that's the way I love to teach it, I think retaining information needs just a little bit more than blindly following and copying. It is a great way to learn. However, you know, you want to be able to feel like when you go back to use the information that it's kind of in your brain somewhere and that you've used it outside of being led through it. So the monster mashup was just kind of a, you know, an encouragement to see if you could take some of the ideas of the lessons, either a rendering style or, you know, a little bit of information you learn about drawing an eyeball or something, and that you could just blend some of those lesson ideas together to create something new, so that you would have used that to, you know, and implemented it in a way that wasn't being taught to you step by step. So you could kind of practice using it in your own brain. However, it's beyond the Extra Mile. The Extra Mile was like, try this if you want. But then, you know, the mashup was just extra on top of that. You know me. So that is what it was all for. But here's some more ephemera. This one was a mashup as well. I love that one. Some of the mashups are out of order, but all the main lessons, the warm-ups, and the Extra Miles are all in chronological order, which is very pleasing. This is my niece, Savannah, and this is me. And this is exactly the same photo taken all these years apart. It's hilarious. Hers was actually at dance class. Mine was just at home, but you can see I'm in my tutu as well. She's hilarious. She was just posing for herself in front of the mirror. We are the same person. I'm obsessed with my niece. She's so hilarious. I really loved how these turned out too. I think I gave some good tips about the way I colored this. So if you want to go back and learn more about this coloring style, I think it's towards the end of the video before I do the speed up section. But just in general, it's a very interesting technique where you kind of color, like if I was going to color this in, instead of just picking each color and going one by one, I start with a really light base and then I work on darker and more intense colors over the top. And it's essentially all layered. It does give a bit of a richer color as well, but for the most part, it's just an easier way to color, not having to pick out which color goes where, but starting with the lightest and then adding your extras. I think it's great when you're doing these tonal type drawings because it can be really hard to pick where you want everything to go. So it's a bit production line style how I colored that. Here's the week 4. The warm-up was Retro Dango. Dango is these, have you ever seen that emoji? The 3 little balls, little pounded rice balls on a stick. It's like a Japanese festival food. It's really cute. Usually green, white, and pink. But I did a candy corn, yellow, white, and orange version. Just using retro faces as well. I really wanted to put in all this retro stuff because it was inspired by those paper mache candy buckets that from like the 50s, the 40s. I don't know when they're from really. The 60s? Let's say 40s through 60s. Somewhere around there. Let's say 50s just to be just to be safe. Mid-century. Very much in this vein over here. I thought it worked really well. To be real, a lot of the time when I'm putting these workshops together, oh, this is what I've got to show you as well. It's gonna be a big flip. I have these books that I just kind of work in, or, you know, journals where I'm just playing, and I think whenever I have fun doing something or I like the look of something, that usually becomes a lesson. So I had drawn this based off of something else I did, and I thought, oh, that was fun, it was cute, it was simple. Let me see how I can make that a lesson. And then I add all the extra stuff in there. So really this now becomes a reference sheet for any time you just need to pick out some eyeballs that are easy to kind of copy and translate into your own work, that are all just kind of referenced there. So I love these. I even challenged myself to do types of eyeballs that I wouldn't particularly do. And I'm really excited to come back and use some of these in my own work. I have actually come back and used a few of these different ones, like this one here, and more recently. Here is all of the 5-year Hobonichi photo strips I put in for my Italy trip. Here's some Italy trip here. I got a mullet haircut. I mean, I've had it, but it's extra melody now that it's grown out long. Here's Lily of Death Valley. This is our main lesson for week 4. Past the halfway point at this point. Love how these turned out. Super gorgeous. It's kind of hard to see something, this is random, but it's hard to see something very simple in my journal because I'm such a maximalist. Like, I love to fill every square inch of the page with chaos. So it feels a little off sometimes. I'm not going to lie. To flip to a page like this, I feel like, oh, I've left it blank. Like, there's nothing on the pages. There's a whole bunch going on, but yeah, I just needed to let it live there. I do love how these turned out though. How wispy and just kind of sinister looking they are. Something so floral and delicate. Gorgeous. This was a lesson. I completely abandoned this lesson, I think, in favor of... what one did I do instead of that? Let me see. I already had her. Was it Mrs. Bolt? I know I changed a bunch towards the end, but originally I did have her. You can even see this was the template I'd scanned for everybody. I was going to go through this, but I didn't end up doing it. I think I scrapped it for something else that I felt like was more relevant at the time. No, Mrs. Bolt was an extra mile lesson as well, but I was going to do this as the Bride of Frankenstein, but just teaching this silhouette because I love that over the shoulder, really high chin up kind of a look. But yeah, I opted out. It'll hit me when I go through it, I'm sure, what I swapped it for. This was one of the mashups as well. I thought these were going to become a lesson, but they didn't. Couldn't figure out what I wanted to do with those. And a bunch of these are just extra random little drawings. This was a extra mile that we focused on a coloring technique where essentially you just dump all of these out and you have to just use every single one of your pencils. It's very effective. I love how she turned out. I love the texture of it. Very Mary Blair-esque. I didn't do that ink bleed lesson as well. I felt like I'd already touched on it. I was going to do a whole page where you had to saturate the whole page and use a black brush pen to draw out these skulls and just watch the ink bleed, just to get people used to having a wet page and working in wet. But we'd already done it with the light lesson, so I thought I'd be doubling up on info there. So I opted out of teaching that one. I think I did the Skull Factory instead, the infinity repeat patterns. Here's week 5, Peekaboo Witches, very much based on Geisha Mountains that we did in Virtual Voyage 6. Some tags here. I went to Din Tai Fung, that was delish. I made this look like a piece of paper because this, like a, full scat page, because this is what these originally I liked them for. I felt like they peaked out over ruled pages. I know most people don't use ruled journals, but a lot of people do have like grids in their journals, which I kind of like consider ruled as well in a way. And I just figured anywhere that you were doing writing that you wanted to add just a little bit of, creative illustration, this would be a cute little thing to add. So I wanted to go through that. Drip Dead Diva, I will never forgive myself for coming up with that after the fact. We did call it Drop Dead Diva. She was our main lesson for week number 5. And my original concept was to take a straw and blow the blood drips down. Actually, originally it was just to get it really wet and then bang the book. I've done that at Art Jarring the Magic before, to varying degrees of success, I'll say. And we all looked kind of insane downtown Disney just bashing our journals, but it was worth it. But I needed to be able to control it. The issue I had with the banging is that it would get the bottom of the journal wet and then you'd forever be trying to catch up and let it dry. And then if you kept banging it again, all that, paint would come down. So I thought, well, I've done this before where I was looking at some Brian Froud pressed fairies, and there was a technique where I used the straw to blow the drips everywhere that looked very effective. It looked like splatter. It was more controlled. So I did that. They do go really wayward. I think the effect is really insane. I love the red, especially with the red eyes. And it was originally inspired by this, which was a secret Inktober that I did in 2019 in my 5-year journal. So I don't know if people know that that's where that came from, but that is what I wanted to recreate. And I wanted to teach this over the shoulder. This really focused on the face and the bust, and that's what I really was looking forward to teaching. A very high contrast, very simple over the shoulder, something very glamorous, very diva. Because that's what I love to work with. And there's a version of it here you can see, but that was an old Wizarding Artist Society lesson, but I ended up teaching a drawn version as well because as much as I love this and how it looks, I did want people to know how to draw blood drips and to go through some of the physics of how that is. And this is probably one of the cleanest, neatest, non, smudgiest drawings I've done in a long time. I was honestly shocked myself that I had the patience to pull it off because I do lose interest halfway through being slow, but I think it looks really pretty. I was really happy with that. It was more than I think I was expecting from myself, so that's a really nice surprise for me sometimes to, exceed my own expectations. I always think I'll do a job that I'm proud of and I'm happy with, but to actually have something that I feel like is a little impressive to myself, I just really love that. This may not be the thing you would have picked out of my journal that I feel like was impressive, but to me, to have this, like, to not have fingerprints everywhere, to not have big streaks of smudges across it, to see I actually took my time to make sure that the blends are really neat, and that I added those extra little bits of depth to the end of each of those drips. Like, those are corners I would usually cut because I don't even say I'm lazy, I'm just impatient. I'm the most impatient. I don't want to fuss unless I want to. And thank goodness I wanted to on that day. So Drip Dead Diva, love her. The extra mile was the Pumpkin King, good old Jack Skellington. I thought he turned out great. He's holding my equity card. And some ephemera. This was week 6. We're in the last couple of weeks of the Halloworkshop here. The warm-up lesson was Skull Factory. It was teaching this kind of production line style idea that I work with sometimes to replicate or, reproduce or make derivatives of this kind of factory line production thought. It'll make sense if you've seen it. If not, don't worry. And I've got a lot of ephemera in here as well. Steve had his birthday, October 16th. So that's some fun ephemera. I did this photo shoot for him downtown. Oh, this stupid tape. So annoyed with this tape. For some reason, I don't know why, this tape splits. And it really frustrates me because I don't want to have to keep putting it back in, but some of these pages have so much tape on them. It's the Scotch gift tape. Oh, this is the magic tape. I think this is the one you can write on. And I think it's because I take my nail and I press it in like this, and then it puts a little bit of a slit at the end, and then I think it just rips all the way up along the seam, even if you've double-sided it. So anyway, sometimes I have to redo that, but whatever. Irritates me. Should give up on that tape, but I don't want to. I want to keep using it because it's here. I've got this. Did I tell you I'm not spending money on a lot of things, but I also have this urge to use up a lot of things. And I think it's just because I have random one-offs of things that I think, well, once you're gone, then I'll get the thing that I need. Which I don't need to get rid of this because Christmas is coming up, so I need this tape. But I should just get one tape that doesn't split so easily and keep that here. But like erasers. For being with Art Snacks for so long, I have so many different erasers, and I just keep thinking, all right, well, I'll use you up, and then I'll just have you guys to worry about. But a whole lifetime you couldn't get through that many erasers. Like, it's just ridiculous at this point. You know what I need to have? A garage sale on Etsy and just like sell this eraser. I mean, I can't really sell things that I was given through Art Snacks. I mean, I guess I could, but might be in poor taste. I'm not quite sure. I think they'll understand if they know I need to get rid of things. It's a garage sale. We'll see. I won't try to make any profit on anything. Well, if I was giving it for free, that's making a profit. Goodness, this is not the conversation I need to be having with you online. I'll go and check my contract, see if it's illegal. This is the Skull Factory, so we've looked at that. Then we move on to the Nara children, inspired by Yoshitomo Nara, because every time Steve looked at me drawing this style, he would go, they just look like they're saying, ugh. And I love that. I thought that was exactly the type of creepy cute that we need for Halloween for my little trick-or-treaters. So they are dressed up in their costumes. And this was from the other night. We were photographing an event, a private club event at a hotel in Newport Beach. It was very exciting and fun to look at. We were just the photographers, but we had to get dressed up. It was a masquerade party. It was all kind of like black lace and leather type experience. So Steve and I got dressed up. He was Tybalt from Romeo and Juliet. He was very upset that people weren't getting it. And I had tried to go for a skull, but I have my beard and I couldn't do the teeth properly. So then I thought, well, I'll just focus on the eyes, and I got too carried away. So I ended up looking like, and then I had streaks through my hair, white streaks. So I looked like the Bride of Frankenstein meets skull meets clown. And then I was in lace and leather chaps of all things. So I had a whole experience going on, but it all looked great in the end. I got a couple of these patches in real life. I just scanned them from my journal from the Anaheim Halloween parade. We do that every year. And it was unfortunate, it was on the same night, so I had to go. I went to it in the day, but I couldn't stay for the parade. I had to leave and go and work that event at night with Steve. But that was fine. I got all my memories in here. And there's my little candle girl. Love the candles. I love the toffee apple boy as well. He's super fun. This was some old ephemera that I've always just really loved that finally found a good solid forever home. This was a monster mashup. Really loved that one. Mrs. Bolt, she's glamour. She just made it into Collage Club for November 2024. Here, you can see her right here. Actually, a lot of the Wednesday Addamses as well are here, but her, I colored in on the computer, and now I feel like I want to put her back in here because, I don't know, that's why I just feel like she belongs in here. In her colored version. I digitally colored them on Procreate. That cut line didn't come out very well. It's fine. Where do I want to put her? Diva. She's going to be in here. Doesn't matter that she's covering herself up a little bit because she is her. She is me. There you go. Just wanted to put that there. Suddenly a Flip is a journal with me. We did some photo shoots. Steve has a friend that he works with who's a content creator. He's really big in the greaser scene. Like, his name's Greaser Boy Joey. If you go to check him out on TikTok or Instagram. And then a friend from work, Teresa, she's super pretty. We did like a witchy thing and then like a Black Widow thing, just for fun. She wanted to showcase her makeup skills, and Steve wanted to have some fun Halloween photo shoots, so we did all that. Love to get my photos in there. All this ephemera, just everywhere. Things that I felt like were Halloweeny. Here are the Franken references stuff. This was the last week of the workshop, week 7. Franken references is actually these worksheets you can see here. These are from old workshops, old virtual voyages and the like. And it was about taking all of these old reference sheets and extracting information from them to create new work and new playtimes. So I essentially used these mascots from Tokyo A Go-Go and these monsters from the Monstropolis thing that we did in the Lamplight Cruise, Virtual Voyage 5, Virtual Voyage 2. I was mashing up all these ideas and extracting all these things from these different pages to come up with these kind of monster art supplies, which I thought were really cute. And then it became like a little daddy-daughter thing. Here, I'll show you. This is where they are here. They're huge. Should try and erase this. Oh, that's ink. I wonder if that'll come off. A little bit. Anyway, so that was great. Love them. There's Sophia on the swing. Savannah on the swing. She loves the swing. And the last main lesson I did was, it was called All of It, which was essentially taking everything we had done and referencing it in a rally stamp. If you've seen any of my virtual voyages post number 6, I think I do this most of the time now for those rally stamps, kind of passport stamp. I always like to give, you know, like a big, hey, I did it. And then I put all of the different things we did. I've got my journal here. I'll show you all of the different lessons I'll reference in the rally stamp. So here is, I usually do it in this grid book. Here's that Burtonville one. All of the different lessons are in there. This was Virtual Voyage 9. So we had the little Grinch looking, the Dr. Seuss, the pencils, the Madelines, the cats, that light bulb guy, all of the stuff. It's all in here. And it's just kind of a fun way to go back and revisit the entire course and pull out the little motifs from each lesson. There was so much in here though. This was all of it, like all of it except for the Wednesday Addams right in the in the last extra mile. But you could pretend she was in here somewhere. I'm sure we could double up on a reference. And then here was the extra miles. That's what that one looked like. And then this was all the main lessons. And so the only one I hadn't done was the warm-ups, and we did the warm-ups together. And this is what the warm-ups look like. I did take this section right here and just decided that in these 4 boxes, I would just color in that part of the grid. It's all flipped, so, I mean, I usually would color it digitally if I had to color it, just because it can be very intense to color it manually. But I do love that. Like, if I did have the time to be able to sit down and just enjoy my coloring, I would just love to color in pages like this. It's just so satisfying to get up into the geometry of it all. But I chose really odd colors for it as well. And then the last extra mile was Wednesday Addams, because there's no way I could put all of my content drops on a Wednesday and not reference Wednesday Addams. Ironically, the very last and on a Friday, but I did her and I used that kind of K-pop star that I've been working with my cat's eye dolls. So got new headshots about the same time, put that in there, journaled that. And I love these. I went on such a creative frenzy. You can see just how many there are everywhere. This is the last mashup. So it became the rally stamp style with the Wednesday Addams, with the art supplies. Like you can see her shoes became the sharpeners. Just love that. The absurdity of all of those things together just really got me going. And then what I loved is I went back to my collage club, because I always do, to grab my ephemera. And when I was pulling out all of the different Halloween things and Wednesday Addams things, this was from Playtest Patreon, and I thought, look at how similar, like, you know, I always think this, I know where the roots of something have come from, and this does have a lot of a base in Yoshitomo Nara, a lot of Mary Blair, a lot of stuff that I looked at in Virtual Voyage 6. Like, a lot of style elements come together at different points and kind of create something new. You're just mashing it all up and you're throwing it back out and you're seeing what happens. And then you start exploring little derivatives here and there. However, it started to all look very much like Pop Mart Global type dolls, little vinyl collectible dolls. And then I thought, oh, maybe that's just where I'm getting really inspired by, because I follow them on Instagram and they always kind of pop up. And I thought before I even followed them, I had this. And this was when I was deep in my Yoshitomo Nara phase, and I was doing this for Playtest Patreon. We were doing the Wednesday Addamses for those Wednesdays. And this one here, I didn't think much of it at the time, because I thought, well, those proportions are so exaggerated and they look kind of insane. But yeah, it almost looks like it was the precursor to what became this head. So I love seeing how these things take shape, and I think that's the beauty of journals and being able to pull them out and look back through your stuff, albeit this was in Collage Club. But if I actually pulled the journal out, I would go and see all this other stuff. You know, you see a journey, you see a progression of something, you see that something you created now, all the different roots and how far you can trace them back. And I think that's really special. It just makes you feel a lot more connected to the process, and that knowing that what you're doing right now, even if you're, you know, not the biggest fan of it, or you don't think much of it now, that like a year or two from now could become the thing that gives you endless amounts of playtime, and you'll have never known that that's what led you there. So I like being on that journey, and I like being at all different parts of it. I like being at this part where I'm super loving something that I'm just so, you know, excited to recreate. And I love it being in this place where I'm just exploring and wondering if that's something I'll, you know, grow fond of over time. It's all good. Love all of it. Love journaling. Could you tell? 40 minutes in. I haven't talked enough about my journal yet. Here, my equity card. Got that. I'm a real performer now. Who knew? This is... I remember I told you I got the new version of that card. Here it is. Love the colors they do there. Super gorge. I did a little color palette here to commemorate that. But yeah, we went to San Diego. We went to a friend's wedding. We went to Mitsuwa. Went and tried this new place, Oliver being a sook. Got my new printer, which now has a grey ink tank, so I need to get grey ink of all things, but thank goodness my ink people do that as well. Lots of ephemera, lots of fun stuff. These are really thick. This journal has busted at this point because it's just so thick. The paper itself is already thick. I told you it was that cardstock paper. But what are you going to do? I'm almost to the end of this journal, actually. One whole workshop took me almost to the end, so that's fine. I've used all of this ephemera. We went and did some engagements in San Diego, so we had like a little mini kind of overnight trip. We love San Diego. Super fun place to visit. But I got so much ephemera from the hotel, it was great. But we did do engagements on the rooftop. It's the rooftop sign says Hotel James, but it's Pali was the hotel. It's kind of an historic. I don't know if the hotel itself is historic. I think it used to be called the Hotel James, but not anymore. That's just the sign they still have at the top. But the elevator in there, I think, was built in 1912, and it's the original elevator. It still has that cage that you swing across, and it has a plaque in there that says at the time that elevator was like the quickest one in the world, like the fastest in the world, and they haven't changed it. And now, ironically, it's probably the slowest in the world. And it's just like such an experience to be in an old school elevator like that. I felt like I was on the Titanic, you know, that scene where they're trying to get out of the elevator and pulling on the gates. It was a lot, but we had a great time. We did lots of great photo shoots. It was friends and they're having engagements, but they booked Steve for engagements over 2 days, and like I think we did 8 different looks. It was the most insane engagements ever, and they were just gorgeous. But they actually let us shoot on the rooftop of the hotel. The general manager took us up there and got the people to open the gate, and there was not like a whole bunch of safety around here either. So even though I look like I'm, you know, being a good sport about it all, I was having the biggest meltdown ever of my whole life. Oh, look, there's some of their engagements I printed. I was freaking out. Like just the top of a high-rise hotel, standing on the roof, even the slightest breeze, because you know I'm on my semaglutide now. I'm too frail. I could blow away. No, in all seriousness, I was super nervous, but it's good memory. Oh, sorry, that was the Halloworkshop. Now I'm just into my regular life. You can see this is how much of my regular life I've lived post-workshop, because we only really just finished last week. And I had a lovely time. Before I go, I will flip this as well, because I think it's only fair that you see how it all came to be. That is the official journal and all the work. This will continue on as a journal for whatever I want to use it for, but I'm going to be switching into a Christmas themed one soon. Let me just zoom you in on this. But yes, I want you to see the workbook. Really, this is the pre-workshop journal, and then the journal that I use while I'm doing it to kind of figure things out. I need something to work things out in, and I had these Daisy Ween books that I got for a print test back in the day. You might have seen the print test online. Here's all the testing that I did, because I had never used the service before, and I wanted to make sure that people knew if they bought the books, how they would actually fare when they used them. These were essentially just Daisy Ween prompts with blank pages for people to draw in. I completed mine. I loved it. There's a whole flip on the YouTube channel, so you can go see that if you want. But I repurposed it into my Halloworkshop. These are my original sketches for the branding for the workshop. Covered it in packing tape. Don't know why. Sometimes I just get crazy. Here were some things. I've got lists on lists. Don't even bother about looking at them all, because I start half of them and then I don't do any of them. But I love to make them. I do end up doing them all. I just don't follow them that quickly. Look, I did tick off all these though. Mini, move at your own pace, self-study, small fun lessons, completable, video tutorials with PDF references if needed. Oh, so this is what I wanted to think of when I was making the workshop. This was how I wanted it to be. And then we've got stuff. It's very not chronological. I mean, it kind of starts out that way, you can see it, but then I would come back at some point and I'd need to just make a whole bunch of word associations, like which I would tell myself, what do I think of when I think of Halloween? Because if I could get that out, those were kind of the top most present thoughts in my brain, and I could capitalize on those being things that I would know a lot about. So I would just put the words down, and then when I would think, okay, great, now I've got to work, I need something to add to this lesson. What could I do? Oh, I'll make it a pumpkin, or I'll make it a vampire, or I'll put candles in it, things like that. So a lot of like word associations, inspirational imagery, just random bits and pieces, abandoned lessons. I put all my lessons on this little post-it system you'll see in a second, and I did abandon some, so we'll see what didn't make it. Like random imagery, like what did this inspire? Who knows? Maybe the fantastical lashes, because I was just really feeling this diva fantasy. But yeah, my mood board was very bare for this. I didn't spend a lot of time with the mood board. It was kind of whatever I had laying around, I chucked it in if I felt like it made sense. Here, drip content. Originally, this third piece of content was going to be a prompt that was printable. Decided against that, and I thought, well, you know what? I still have YouTube to do while I'm doing all of this. Why don't I just make that something that I share on YouTube? And that's how this became the extra mile. And I thought, well, anyone who's in the workshop could use what they've learned throughout the week and apply it to that lesson, and they could do the extra mile. They could go and do that extra kind of Friday piece of content if they wanted to. But in the effort of making it completable, one of my most completable workshops, I wanted to make sure that it was a warm-up, it was a main lesson, and you had a week to do it. And a lot of people did find a lot of success doing that and actually did manage to complete the entire thing. So hats off to you guys, because even though it's completable, I mean, it's never a guarantee. we all get busy, especially towards actual Halloween. So congratulations to anyone for however much you decided to get done. It can be a lot. Here was just lessons and ideas. This was from Daisy Ween. Don't even think about that. This one was kind of one of the first things I knew I wanted to do. And at that point, I didn't know things were going to be main lessons or warm-ups. So I kind of tagged things as I wanted them to be. And this was just, I needed a little key to get going that at least spelt my name. And I was going to make it a bag. Instead of having the bag ripped open and then the message inside, it was just going to be a bag. And then you had to, like, my name is James. Hello. J, there's only one J and it's at the beginning. So I put one of those. A is second, so there's two of those. M is third in my name, so there's three of these candies. And so the spread of candy was going to be your name spelt out that way. But in the end, I decided this was more visually appealing to have the bag ripped open. Then I thought you could characterize it a lot better. So this was where I thought I was going to put all of my things, and then I decided to do it in my grid notebook instead. This was a main lesson. I ended up doing so many of these. I'll put notes sometimes too, like power of pencils, textures, smudge. If I think that there's a kind of way that I want to teach it. Otherwise, sometimes it's just imagery, and I think the world is my oyster. Whatever medium I'm feeling, whatever technique I want to explore, that's how I'll do it. But I knew I wanted to do pencils for that. Here is my post-it system. Week 1, week 2, week 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And here I would put things together. Like originally this was its own thing, cobweb lashes, and then this was a high contrast face with lashes. And then I put them together because I was like, essentially that's the same thing. And then it put some theme suggestions, ? Because I wanted to make sure that you knew that this is how I'd expand on that idea. So this is how I was keeping track of everything I wanted to do and making sure I wasn't doing too much crossover. There's going to be, because I like what I like and I want to teach what I like. But for the most part, it was like, I didn't want to have this be too close to something else that was very diva. I wanted to make sure it was kind of spread out. Originally, they were also all in a different order where they were, they were themed to make sense. So the Retro Dungo was with these geisha mountains, which was with these Kokeshi witches, because they were all kind of a Japanese vibe. And so it was going to be like the Japanese week. And then there was one, I think, so there's a Mary Blair one, there's a Mary Blair one, and I think somewhere else I was going to do something that was all going to be very 1950s retro week. But I felt like it was too much theme on theme. Sometimes I get like that. I'll build too much into it. That's how Virtual Voyage happened. That's why we're all confused when that starts up every season, because the theming has gone so far. So I just decided, no, keep it simple, stupid, and go that way. These were two lessons that didn't have these original post-its. These were last minute additions that I traded other things out for. And then these were all different ones. So this was a Nara pumpkin patch. This was the Candy Apple Kid, and this was the Candle Child, but I just decided to put them all together because they all had a Yoshi Tomonada aesthetic, and I felt like I could just theme them all as trick-or-treaters in costume, rather than teaching them all as separate things. And there's no real reason other than if I can combine a lot of stuff together that makes sense, I get to diversify the content more. I think it's always better to hit a wider range of content than to go too deep on one particular thing. I just never really know if you just don't want to be that, like, I don't want to give it to that person who's like, oh, I don't really like that, and then suddenly there's 6 lessons on that. Especially if I've not been too specific about the content, I at least like to make it broad. So I'll always try and combine whatever can be combined. But in this, I tend to stick to things that are pretty girly, pretty diva, skulls, Tim Burton. Like, I mean, it's always going to be the stuff that I love. So you can kind of half guess what's coming. Here was the schedule. I think we pretty much stick to about that. I know somewhere it's got the, oh no, I did. I rubbed it out there, but that was the Bride of Frankenstein, but I swapped it for the Nara children. Yoshi Tomonara-esque. I don't know why the daisies are in here. Thought I was going to do a Halloween daisy crossover again. And these are all just sketches that I would do as I was figuring things out, seeing what I wanted to do, trying to look at shapes and how I would break them down. And sometimes it's just lesson notes. I know I need to get a piece of information across to my students, and I just want to know how I'm going to say it and what is important for me to get across. Because I know I could always just tell you how to achieve what is on the page. I know I can break it down into the simplest steps, but I still want to be able to give you how and why it came together in case that's important too. Like, I want you to be able to have the knowledge that's in my head. You know, I might not be able to remember it all during the lesson, but you know, the more we do it, the more you kind of go over it, the more you see it pop up in my work over and over again. You know, hopefully it starts to sink in a little bit more, and then you have access to the same information I pull from when I create. And that's essentially what I would hope I could give, you know, in the best way possible in small lessons every week, is that you get access to all that information, because that's how I enjoy what I do so much. It's because I've built up all those little bits of information that I just access and need to access to have a good time. So I like to be able to go through all those informations before I press record, make sure that they're all in my head properly. It can be very intimidating to turn on a camera and just start speaking authoritatively with knowledge, and knowledge that can be fact checked. Like, it's a lot. When I'm sharing my opinion about my journal, I can talk for hours on end, it's fine. But when I sit here and think I have to explain why that shape can be broken down like that, or how to do that, or how I would think that, suddenly it's like, ooh, make sure you know, like, you know, you don't want to be just vamping for no reason, trying to make something up that doesn't make any sense. You know, half the time it happens anyway. You get a little tongue-tied and you just have to start again. For the most part, if I've got a journal like this and I can just scribble things out before I start, like I'll scribble this out before I start, that's enough. I know what I need to do. I'll get in a hiccup where I'll think, ooh, would I want to do that? Or is that too much? And then I'll think, great, I'll make sure I say when I get to that bit, this is why I wouldn't do that. Or this is the obstacle I faced. And hopefully I can preempt any students' obstacles and kind of come up with a solution before it even becomes a problem. Here was some of those Bride of Frankenstein ideas I was working with. I originally loved her too. She has that Wednesday Addams kind of vibe as well, that face in particular, but the body is a little bit different. And I love the line work on this one, but I couldn't find a simple way to go through it. Some things just are more advanced and you just need to know a lot more information beforehand before you start. Like, there's a lot of implied knowledge that goes into how all of that works. So even, I mean, and you can explain it simply, like you can see if you really focus in on this area where these black lines hit this back of the dress, they turn into white lines. So there's an invert happening right here, but also why would you loop this around right here? And it's because it contours over the hip, which you would only really know if you know that that's how lines would fall over a curved contour. And so then you've got to almost go right back to the base and teach all of those things first. By the time you get to this, you're hours in of all the theory. So I've always flirted with the idea of teaching more advanced things, but there's just so much implied knowledge you would have to know first. So one day I would hope I could just do it once and just teach a lot of advanced stuff and say, like, do my courses first and then come and do this one. Or like at least have seen, you know, maybe 2 or 3 workshops where I've explained a lot of my ideas before you start it, or just blindly follow along. Let's be real. I learned a lot of this just from looking at other people doing it and having a go myself. So there's a lot to be gained from just throwing yourself in the deep end. But yeah, if it's a little stressful for you, it's because there's just a lot of knowledge that sometimes we're working with that people aren't explaining, and you go to do it and you're like, why am I not working like that? Why does my brain not think like that? And sometimes it's years of you know, attempts to get something and finally understand what it was that you were missing. But that's why we have workshops, because we do the years of effort, we go through all the trials, and then we can tell you what went wrong and you can just avoid it altogether. That's the value, right? You get to skip to the good part. Not that the learning isn't good. I did have a good time learning, but I am so much happier now with what I've got in my tool belt, let me tell you. This was the sketch of the branding. I loved it. More word associations. Oh, these burning witches, that was so funny. This one was kind of the hardest one for me to figure out, the Mary Blair witch. I had no idea what I wanted to do with that. Here are some of those vintage paper mache trick-or-treat things. I thought she was a fun idea. She was kind of diving into the ground, but wherever she went through the ground, she became skeleton. Like she was diving into her own grave, and then just became a little too morbid. This is a Tangrams idea. This is when I was still thinking about prompting, and I was going to use these shapes to prompt you to create something else with it. I don't know. Did not go beyond that thought. This had nothing to do with it. This was for a costume idea that we never ended up doing, Steve and I. Tim Crabell, look, one popped up. There's two. I was gonna do some Tim Crabells, but she's had her time. She exists where she exists, only in our memories now, when she comes up time to time. This was some collage for something completely different and random. Love these. These were old Wizarding Artists Society things. My Cat's Eye Girls. These became Wednesday Addams. She was just a witch. She ended up in Collage Club. The Skull Factory. Love these. Mary Blair. This was still that promptable idea. I was just going to give you a page of skull silhouettes that you had to add characters to, like characterize. So she was like 1920s. This is like a guy in a top hat. Ended up using that idea to make these say something skull. No, Skull Factory, the repeat pattern. Here were the silhouette spider webs that I ended up doing in a page in 10 video. This was the information reference sheet for that lesson. Some lovely lashes. The Nara children. I've explained this process before, but a lot of the time if I want to use something as a base, like one of my illustrations, this is what I used to do with stamp sets, because I loved the sketch and I loved how it looked, but I couldn't get it to look like that exactly when I would clean it up or like redraw it. There was something so specific about the way that it was drawn that I would just need to replicate it like that. So I would put it into Photoshop and make the line work red, print it out, and then draw over the top of it really, really clean. And then I would scan that back into the computer and take the red color out. And so I was just left with the line work that I did. So this is a lot of the time, if you can see, I've even created my template based off of the exact proportions of the drawing that I liked, and then used that to create my others. Otherwise, you can see here, I will play with the proportions. I will shift them, but ever so slightly changing things give them a completely different look. And sometimes I just want to capitalize on the exact look that I think is so cute and I want to replicate. So I think it was this guy here. I think he was the one that I tried to, yeah, you can see replicated from him. I thought he was really cute. His exact proportions. Originally it was going to be a trio of illustrations, but I thought I would simplify it. They were going to be simpler. I would simplify the illustration and teach you a rendering style that was more exciting. So it was this very scratchy, extra scribbly. It's kind of a sketch hidden under a cleaned up version of another sketch. Lots of refining. There's that red line work again. If you actually go and look at your reference sheets, you don't see any of that line work underneath it. That's because I removed the red, but that's how they all look like. They're exactly the same proportions. Sometimes I will just redraw it and I'll have to be very careful, or I'll use a ruler, but if I can avoid it, this is why I made a lot of stamp sets, because once I found a base for something I liked, I could use the stamp set to replicate the exact same layout. That blueprint would remain really constant. These were awful. This one is so yuck. And her too. I did struggle with this monster mashup a little bit as well. I love what I ended up coming up with, this little pumpkin with the teeth and the blood drip, but the first couple of attempts were wild. This one's fun. Mrs. Bolt, she looked really good. This was really effective. I did like this, but then when I thought about having a veil on her, I just thought that's so dramatic. I have to do that. And then she could have a flower with the bolt. Pencil textures, different types of pencils for scribbles, and how that they look different. You may think you're just grabbing 2 pencils and you're doing a scribble, but even one pencil turned different ways and with different pressures, and even scribbling different styles. Like scribbling circles is very different to scribbling up and down like zigzags. Always focus on what you can do with a pencil, because I feel like most of us have a pencil, a pen, and a piece of paper at the very least. Like you could, you know, even get one. I'm not going to say steal one, but you can get one from different places. Some places have some free pencils just out, and you know, the back of an envelope or something would work. And I always want to make sure that, you know, you maximize what you can do with a very modest set of supplies. I think that's always a great way to start building your skill set, because you will unlock greater potential if you can maximize from such a small, you know, humble beginning. I think most of us do that. I don't know most people that I've talked to anyway, and certainly not myself. We didn't start out with tons and tons of art supplies, and then when we did start to build them, sometimes we couldn't afford really expensive ones, or you could only afford one really nice pencil. So if you can get the most out of a very small set of things, when you get the rest, sometimes it just enhances the whole experience. But you'll always be really thankful for the fact that you felt like you could still do it without all the extra. And then you become like me and you're like, now I don't want to buy anything. I'm disillusioned with a lot of new stuff too, because I'm not seeing many new things that I would like to try. There are some things, but I'm just not willing to spend money on it right now. And I'm just in a bit of a love affair with the stuff that I already have. I'm loving seeing things run out. I've got a big box of empty things, and I just love seeing it grow, because I see how many things I've enjoyed to the end. Like, that's, I don't know. Imagine I get teary over dead-end art supplies. I was at a thrift store the other day. I was looking for a chest of drawers, but they had these really big glass, like just glass vases, and I've been looking for a really big glass vase to put all my empties in to kind of make a big display of it. I was going to get one that day, but I didn't get it. I kind of regret it. I should go back, especially now that I'm crying over them. Anyway, some Peekaboo Witches. I really needed to figure this out before I taught it. It's so funny. Some of the warm-up lessons took a lot of the most prep. Took the most prep. Pumpkin King. Love these ballerinas. So gorgina. Steve actually wanted me to do things like this. He keeps sending me pictures or videos on Instagram of when they will do like, someone will just have a marker and they will draw out the shape. And then they'll go over the top of it with usually a fountain pen is the one that he sends me. So this is just a really quick example of it. And he will send me these all the time and be like, James, you should do something like that and put it on your Instagram and you'll become famous. He's very supportive, my poor husband. Fame is not the game here, but eyes on the content is, I guess. So I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. And I did these on my reel and I loved them. Didn't become famous, but I really loved them. And he was very happy to watch it. He told me that was exactly what he was thinking. So sometimes you just do it for your husband. And that's great too. It's definitely a nice personal sentiment to remembering those stories when I look through my journal. Here were those skulls for the Skull Factory lesson, the repeat patterns, some warm-ups for Lily of Death Valley. This monster mashup. I had a bunch of these. I actually sent it to my friend and was like, can you please pick one? Because I can't pick them. I did love her. I thought she was so hilarious, but he ended up picking this one and said that I should, originally it didn't have this little style on it, but he said I should do it in the style with that I did the lesson in. So it did it. It turned out cute, but still love her. She's very diva. The art supplies. I think this was actually what I used in the lesson to show my example. It looks too neat for me to have just done that for no reason. I don't know. And this was old Daisy Ween. I used this in my lesson to demonstrate. Oh, look, a blank page. Oh, she's got all that on her face. Luckily it's graphite, I can remove some of that. Doesn't really matter, but I would clean up just a little bit of that. If it's not her face, it's that Wednesday transfer. Love these Wednesday Addams. Thought she was so fun. And this was tests, and that was it. There was nothing else, just that little, I think I demonstrated what it would look like if you didn't use the grid. I like it wonky like that, but this is irrelevant to the Halloworkshop. I was picking the layout for my gift wrap deco journal, so that's Christmas, but that is what I used to create the workshop and how I go through it and what I tell myself as I do it all and how it all comes to be. That's really, this is a lot of the success of the workshop for me, is all the prep that goes into it. What is it? Fail to prepare, prepare to fail, or fail to plan, plan to fail. Very much that, because you can see there's just so much. There's so much, and if you don't keep on top of it, you will absolutely overwhelm yourself, and I never want to be there, because if I'm overwhelmed, then my students are overwhelmed, and I don't want that. I want a great, fun, happy time creating in art journals, and I think that's what we had. So I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to say thank you so much if you did join the Halloworkshop, or if you joined me here in the Extra Mile, or on Instagram for the bonus monster mashup, Instagram Reels, wherever I saw you. I hope you had a fantastic spooky season. Thank you so much for following along and for being a part of it and making the process all that more enjoyable for me as your teacher, as your host, as your workshop leader, whatever you think of me as. I'm just here to have a great time in these art journals and share what I love with you. Thank you so much for indulging me with that, for these hours that I spend talking your ear off about it, and we're going to hard pivot right into Christmas. So I'm going to leave the flip right there and get back to that gift wrap deco journal that I just showed you at the end of that. I'm super excited about it. I actually can't even explain how excited I am. I just need to get all the files done to get it off to the printer. So we will see what happens there. This has been my Halloworkshop 2024 flip. Until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.